at the end. So we'll do about 35, 40-ish minutes of questions and conversation. And then at the end, just a quick 5-minute, where can people find you? And I like to say consensually and respectfully, where can they find you on the internet or at conventions and festivals, whatever that looks like. So share whatever you feel comfortable or called to share at that point.
All right.
So,
Okay, I'm getting ready to remove me, put you all on the screen, and then when you're ready, just get started. There won't be a 1, 2, 3, go.
okay.
You just start it up, Marissa.
I love
It's a
it.
very exciting time.
I love wild
I don't know.
times. Wild
I don't know if
times.
y'all recognize that quote.
Mm.
It's from The
No.
Matrix.
Oh gosh.
Yes.
Little Dozer. He's like, it's a very exciting time.
Does feel like those days. Okay, welcome. Strange. Nope, I do this every time. We're gonna not do that one, Penelope. I'm always like strange women, strong worlds. We're amazing.
I mean,
Could be.
I'm not wrong, right? But welcome, watchers, listeners, readers, writers, to Strong Women and Strange Worlds, Inspiration and Insight. Today we have this fantastic panel for you talking about magic beyond the stars, the beautiful blend between science fiction and fantasy, whether that be magic in space. I'm hearing the Muppets in my voice, in my head while I say like magic in space. It's fine. Or just, gods fighting inside, like it could be all kinds of things, and we are going to dive into it. So before we get too far into my babble, let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, and let's go ML, Valerie, Lauren, if that works for y'all.
Hi, I'm ML Dumars, and I write short stories, novels, sci-fi, poetry, and quite often they do feature strange women who are in strong worlds.
We love it.
yeah, I'm Valerie Valdez. I'm the author of the Chilling Effect trilogy, the space fantasy novel Where Peace is Lost, the fantasy rom-coms Which You Would and Which Is Mine, and I'm also co-editor of Escape Pod, your weekly science fiction podcast.
And I'm Lauren C. Tafoe. I'm a science fiction and fantasy writer from New Mexico. Accelerated Growth Environment is a echo thriller that just came out earlier this year from Sharky Press. My first book was Implanted. It was a cyberpunk punk thriller. Came out from a robot a couple years ago. And the thing I'm most excited about to talk to today is my novella, A Hunger with No Name, which came out from University of Tampa Press in 2024. And I'm excited to have this conversation today, ladies.
Yay! Oh, me too. I am Maurice Wolf. I am your host.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm
JK.
sorry. We have to do that all over again.
Oh no!
Okay. This is
went
the
so
reason.
well.
Okay, but this is the reason. No, it was perfectly beautiful.
Mhm.
But I realized that you all were mentioning your books, so I probably wanted to move you off the screen. 'Cause
Oh,
I
okay.
thought we were going to do the books later, but I realized you started mentioning your books.
During the intros,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So should we or should we not?
No,
You
we
sh-
can't.
No, you
'Cause
should.
I didn't.
Yeah.
But you
yeah.
should. Because when everyone started mentioning the books, I realized, oh, we needed to move them, so I could have put the books in the middle of the screen.
No,
Okay.
that's my bad.
So,
Well, how about leave us like this for me to do the slightly better welcome, hopefully this time. And then I'll say for them to introduce themselves, and then you can scooch us.
yes,
Does that work?
exactly.
Okay.
Okay,
And then
that's
so each of us probably like pause, wait for the switch, and then start
Mhm.
talking, I'm assuming.
right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
also have a. Can you hear scratching from my area? Because my dog is very upset she's not in here.
Oh, baby.
We can't hear anything now. I can't
Yeah.
hear
Mine
anything
is really good.
Excellent. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
now. All right.
What is she
Yeah, fair
Alright.
question. Mine is right under this desk. Just
She's a barker, and I never know when she's going to bark.
Okay. All right. Cool. But no, we haven't heard
special guest.
anything. We haven't
Okay.
heard anything. All right. So start again. Then when you say that you're going to do everyone's individual introductions, I will move
Yes.
everyone to the side. Okay. And then you can also mention your books.
You're the best.
All right. Ready.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, this is great. I messed up anyway, so now it's just beautiful. Everyone had a good dry run. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, back to Strong Women, Strange Worlds, Inspiration and Insight, Magic Beyond the Stars. So the blending of science fiction and fantasy, however that might look, from Star Wars to the Broken Earth trilogy. There are all kinds of ways to do it, and we are going to have an amazing time diving in today with this incredible panel of authors who are going to help us talk about Magic Beyond the Stars. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we will go ML, Valerie, Lauren. Then I'll introduce myself a little bit better, and then we will jump right in.
Okay, well, I'm ML Dumars, and I write in several genres. I'm currently, my most recent book is A Different Way of Being, and it's a sci-fi novel. I also have a short story called Josiah that has a bit of the mystical in it. So I am loyal to all genres and yet committed to none.
I love it. That's my best friend, fellow author Casey Azell calls it genre fluid.
Genre
I love it.
fluid, yes.
Great. I am Valerie Valdez. I am the author of the Chilling Effect trilogy, the space fantasy novel Where Peace is Lost, as well as the fantasy rom-coms. These are contemporary, Which You Would and Which Is Mine. And I am also co-editor of Escape Pod, your weekly science fiction podcast.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And I'm Lauren C. Defoe. I'm a speculative fiction author based in New Mexico. Just earlier this year, Accelerated Growth Environment came out from Shiraki Press. It's an echo thriller. My first book, Implanted, is a cyberpunk solar punk mashup, and that came out a couple years ago from Angry Robot. And the thing I'm most excited to talk about today is A Hunger with No Name, which is a novella that came out from University of Tampa Press in 2024. And it's an odd little story that I really love, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today.
Awesome. Odd little stories are the best. And I am Marisa Wolf. I am a science fiction and fantasy author, and I promise that all of my stories will end in hope. I will make you no promises for the path to get to that hopeful end. So my latest is a fantasy novel. There is not a lot of sci-fi in it, but there's a little bit of science. It is called A Plague of Magic. And we may or may not talk about it through this. I don't think so. But it's beautiful. I love it. And more than that, I love talking about strange women and strong worlds and strong women and strange worlds. And so we are going to do that as a panel today and dig right in. So you each talked a little bit about the story that is closest to this Magic Beyond the Stars kind of idea. But why don't we hear a little bit more about them? Like what is it specifically that you played with in that blending of genres? You can go in any order.
Well, I'll talk about A Different Way of Being, which started out as all my stories do, as me being or the vessel receiving this wonderful story, and I just can't wait for the next scene to show up and to know what's happening, who's going to do what. But it did turn out to be a sci-fi because the inspiration for the story actually came from a calendar I had. And for that month, it was an astronomy calendar. So for that month, it showed this just beautiful, enigmatic image of a cone nebula. And I just got enthralled with this thing, and I had to read about it, and I had to find out what it was and see other images of it. And as I was looking at it and learning more about it, I said, oh my gosh, what a great place, a terrible place to have a penal colony. Yes.
Oh.
And then I started thinking, oh my gosh, what would I have to do to be so bad that I would be committed to this penal colony in this location? So that's where the whole story just bloomed from that image and that thought. So that's my inspiration for the story. It is it has a little bit of swashbuckling action, and it promises a wonderful dogfight with the jet engine. So yes, gotta have that.
Yes. It's so beautiful. Nebulas are so magical to begin
Yes.
with. Yeah. That's awesome.
This thing looks like a monster. If you get a chance to look it up, please do.
I am making that mental note right now.
Yes.
And then I'll go next. I I got my formal training as a social scientist, specifically looking at how people adopt both internet resources and technology more generally. And so a lot of my science fiction stories are ultimately about technology in some fashion, whether it's a new technology that is being adopted, or the things that can go wrong with technology, or in the specific case of A Hunger with No Name, it's a low-tech culture having a conflict with a high-tech culture, and how an individual from the low-tech culture kind of is forced to assimilate into the high-tech culture, and then what they discover about it, and how that experience gets filtered through her belief system, which is where the mythology kind of component comes in. And so I had a lot of fun playing with that dynamic, that low tech versus high tech, and not really one is better than the other, but exploring how that intersection really kind of creates a really rich kind of both a story world, but also lots of layers to conflict. And so that was a lot of fun to explore.
That's awesome. And it is a little bit like that. Any science sufficiently advanced
Yes.
is like magic, right? So, I love that's awesome.
Yeah, in the world of Where Peace is Lost, there is a lot of sort of very advanced technology that is not super explained, because why get into it? That's not the point of the book. It's not hard sci-fi, so no need to go there. It is also similar to Lauren was talking about, a sort of high tech versus low tech situation, in which this low tech society that has formed on a particular planet is bumping up against this vast empire that was using them as a storage closet. And one of their giant robots has gotten loose and is going to savage the environment. And so their hero of the day is another outsider who is basically a space knight, sort of like Obi-Wan from Star Wars, and is also aided by a couple of mercenaries that have come with special abilities. But theirs is technological, while the Space Knight is the one that has essentially the magical powers. And so having that sort of distinction, that separation, gives you the ability to play more, I think, with reality in ways that you can't necessarily. Like, if I say this planet has a purple sky, well, if a planet has a purple sky, there's particular elements that are in the atmosphere that are actually probably not breathable or ideal for humans to live on. And so things get a little weird. But that is the benefit, I think, of space fantasy. It lets you delve into stuff that you wouldn't necessarily be able to justify with science, and it lets you get into things that are a little more numinous, a little more mythical, spiritual. And I think that's cool too.
That is super cool. So for each of you, for these books, because I have a feeling hosting the show is going to be just heck on my TBR, because now I'm like, yes, all of this, yes, for my eyeballs, thank you. What came first for you with these stories in particular? Was it the idea of the blending? Was it a character? Was it the world? Was it the purple sky? What first was like, here, this is what I'm writing?
I really, like I mentioned, I was really intrigued by this this astronomy cloud of dust and gases, and the luminous, the way it affects the environment around it, the surroundings, and it makes everything sparkle, and yet have this luminous, dreadful color to it. It's like black with reds and sparkly things in it, and it's actually a place where new stars are born. And yet I set this penal colony in this location where lives are pretty much destroyed and twisted. The premise of A Different Way of Being is that we have suddenly, not suddenly, but we have achieved the highest level of a society in which we are free of crime, we are free of inequality, we are free of chronic disease. And yet we have security agents who monitor us, and they're on the lookout for anything that may be of danger to us. One of those agents meets one of the citizens and realizes that something's different about her and her son. And she realizes the citizen is actually an empath. So the science of being an empath starts to blend into this world making. So it kind of, the world came first, the planets that were created for this story and the citizens that live there, and then how they look and dress and act, and what happens to our libraries. It starts to involve social aspects of it,
Mhm.
as well as medical aspects of it, and it kind of becomes complicated yet very simple.
Hmm.
The main character is this woman who's a librarian. She has a child, and yet she's an empath, and it's actually illegal to be an empath or to
So
be
dangerous.
any way differently abled. So if you consider all of the disease that we have in our society, those become extinct. And
Hmm.
if you have any of those aspects, you have done something wrong or you have neglected to do something.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's fascinating. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, every story starts a little bit differently in terms of like what kind of kicks things off. But for this
Mhm.
particular story, it was a dream, and that's not
Mm.
always my
Ah.
standard mode of operation. But this one in particular, it was a nap more so than like a deep sleep. And I woke up and I had this image of this woman staring off into this horizon at this speck, this luminous speck that was shining back at her, and that's the glass city. And I
Mhm.
had to figure out like why this woman was out there, why she was looking at this place with such um like this strange like fascination and horror. And
Mm.
so then I had to like, once I took that kind of situation, then I had to like go back and like figure out like how did she get there, what is her issue, and create this world around it. And I would say the story just kind of poured out of me in a way that it doesn't always work. And it was so fun. And I was able to kind of take the where I live in New Mexico, the high desert, and kind of put it into this story in a way that I haven't always been able to explore in some of my other more tech heavy stories. And so
Mhm.
that was also really gratifying to kind of take what I love about New Mexico and then put it into this story, even if it's a completely different kind of world and context. So that was super fun.
Oh, that's awesome. Love that.
I love that too because I'm writing another high desert story that it's my California high desert, but similar kind of
Okay.
vibe, right?
Awesome.
Where it's like it is a very specific sort of biome and it has its own
Mm.
Absolutely.
nuances. For my story, I wrote an Everglades styled biome because I am a Miami girl, and I feel like a lot of the swamps that we see in literature end up being swamps, kind of more of a Louisiana bayou style
Mhm.
or savanna area kind of
Mhm.
swamp, or even just farther north in Florida in different areas, you have more kind of
Marshy.
standard swamps. Yeah. Where the Everglades is a river of grass. It's a kind of different experience. Different animals live there. That was not my big inspiration for this, though. That's just a side thought, as you mentioned, writing about your biome. But the big inspiration for me, I do a lot of stories that are X meets Y in some form or fashion.
Mhm.
This one was definitely very heavily Star Wars inspired.
Mm.
I kept thinking a lot about Obi-Wan living for years and years, ostensibly alone on Tatooine, and I was like, "Well, what was he doing?" And obviously now we have a lot of that filled out. The stories, the movies, the books, and all that have sort of caught up and filled that in. But growing up without all of that, let me sort of imagine different things, and I wanted to explore a concept of someone like that, someone who is a refugee from a war that they lost,
Mhm.
and is creating this new life in a different place, and is from this order of kind of space knights that instead of being aggressors, instead of leading armies into battle sort of thing, they're very much protectors, and more like um, uh, not even peacekeepers, but disaster response more than anything
Mm.
else.
Mm.
Um, and that the why in the X meets Y there is the Knights Hospitaller, which is a really old sort of crusader group. Not going to pretend that they're without sin, but they were dedicated at the time towards creating hospitals, and that
Mhm.
was kind of their thing. Was okay, you've got a bunch of people getting chopped up by all of these fights that they're getting into. Well, somebody needs to give them medical attention and also help the people themselves who live in these cities that are getting occupied. And so the Knights Hospitaller would erect hospitals that would take care of the populations. And so the the sort of the Jedi meets the Knights Hospitaller was one of the starting points for me. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Like every project, just like you said, Lauren, is different, but just about everything I've ever written has started with the character, and then I have to figure out like, where are you? What is happening? What is this deal? And these are all such freaking engaging, like immediate hook type things to start, like the gorgeous but deadly nebula, the gleaming city in the desert, the like the, yeah, ancient knights meet space knights. Come on, I'm in. Like all of these are so fascinating. So when you are balancing all of these pieces, whether it be the science in your fantasy or the deadly and the beautiful, I mean, sometimes it's hard not to break the world when it's just sci-fi or just fantasy. Is there anything you think about or weigh in these balancing to make sure that the world fits, like the purple sky, or what happens when how empaths are treated? Like what do you weigh to make that feel like a world that makes sense to your readers?
So I am a very strong proponent of leaning into verisimilitude when possible in order to
Mm.
ground things. And so essentially, if you make a certain number of small details feel very real, then it helps people swallow the bigger stuff, right? And so if you have a very grounded um, you know, this is where these people live, this is what their houses are like, this is what they eat, this is how they get from place to place, this is what their cities look like, this is what their social structure is like, then I think that it helps to then support, and she can pull a magical glowing sword out of her chest.
Why not?
Because yeah, because why not? You've
Mhm.
sort of built the scaffolding to get to that place. And so yeah, for me, I feel like some of the stuff that I constructed was just what I said there. It's what is the day-to-day life of these people? Why do they need the help that they need? They've
Mhm.
got a society structured such that they are very in tune with nature. It's part of why they live on this planet instead of literally anywhere else. They still
Mhm.
have technology, they still have a spaceport, but also animals have rights, oceans have rights, rivers have rights, and
Oh my
they try to
gosh,
take care
yes.
of everything. And so, because of that, the destruction that's going to be caused by this giant robot is a very important thing that they feel they need to take care of. They're responsible for it. Obviously, animals aren't going to break the robot, so they have to do the thing. And I think
Mhm.
that again, like creating that concept of something that is accessible, understandable. We have
Mhm.
robots today that are destroying parts of our planet. It helps
Yep.
ground stuff so that when the magic comes out, you're like, okay, yeah, I'll take that because all of the other stuff feels real and right and accessible.
Yeah. Smart.
I work similar to what Valerie's describing, in that the story has to almost gain the trust and understanding
Mhm.
of the reader.
Mhm.
You're bringing things to the story, but you leave just enough room for the reader to bring their stuff into the story as well. So describing, like in the opening scene from a different world, the woman is singing an old Cole Porter song,
Oh.
and to them, this is an old earth song.
Mhm.
It's not modern. It's
Mhm.
something from the way ancient past, and yet she sings these old songs and attracts the attention of this librarian. And the librarian gets the chance to finally meet her when she's using her video reader, which would be very similar to our tablets today, except that it's holographic. It when she's reading something, not only does she read the text, but she also sees the image of what's
Mm,
being described, and then she compares it to the another patron of the library who has a newer model, and his model not only is the holograph moving around, but it talks to him, and he
mm,
can talk back to it. So it talks about things we're familiar with, that such as a tablet and a repository for our literature and our history, and yet it has this otherworldly dynamic to it.
yeah.
They're able to travel beyond the speed of light from one planet to another, and yet they have these climate controlled cities in which, you know, it does not rain.
Mm,
Nothing that would be of harm to them happens.
mm,
If it rains, it's just enough to take care of the garden that's in the courtyard, in the
mhm,
living pod, the home pods that they have set up, and they have elevators, they have transit,
mm,
multiple lines of transit, public transportation that, who knows how that motor runs, but
mm.
it's very much like the elevated trainways.
Yeah.
So bringing the familiar
Mhm,
in, even in the description of one of my characters who's a headmistress, she wears a dress that's very Elizabethan without the bust. You know,
mm,
it has the beautiful lavender tapestry, and she actually has books in her office where she removes one of the books and it causes something to happen elsewhere on the school that
wow.
actually saves the students when the peacekeepers,
All right.
someone mentioned
Okay.
peacekeepers.
This is
Oh,
the me. Okay. This is
oh,
the me. I'm
Yes,
on here. This is intentional. Okay.
yes,
Because I can edit this.
yes,
Um, More talking about inspiration and
yes.
insight as opposed to what happens in your book. So
Gotcha.
I'm just trying to re-guide I'm don't want to jump in. I would say like I feel like Lauren, you're not talking enough. I
well,
think
she hasn't
more.
answered this one yet.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
more. Yeah,
fair
but no,
enough.
Yeah.
just no. I think like more conversation about
Mhm,
the theory, the insight and inspiration as opposed to what happens in your book. You talk about
Okay,
these things, and this is what's supposed to lead people to be interested in you enough to buy your book.
okay.
So, yeah, more of that, more interaction. Don't worry, it won't look crazy when I put it all together. But it's like to try to more interaction with you all to
With
you could
each
talk,
other.
you could talk to each
mhm,
other. You could talk
Right.
about these things. You say, yeah, you just said that thing, and I was thinking the same thing.
mhm.
I watched Gilligan's Island, and it gave me the idea that everyone in my
3 hour tours.
society has to wear, yeah, or they have to
Yeah.
wear a captain's hat. I don't know, but
Mhm,
and why signs of authority, issues of authority, issues of uh, uh, resources,
mhm,
why it is that they're in your particular environment. In fact, I put this question about when you say environment in the context of space, how do you integrate the concept of environment? Is it
mhm,
environment, in the specific location or environment, with regard to the entire world or worlds that you all are living in? Okay, I'm going to be quiet now and I'm going to get back to it, but I just want to say
yeah.
more interaction between you all, less
Mhm,
talking about your individual book,
Okay.
except as it relates to a particular topic. Because we want people to be interested in you to read your book.
mhm.
We aren't here to recite what is in the book. Even though I'm thinking, I'm gonna go read this book. But all right,
Yeah.
sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead and get
Okay.
get back in. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
But Mel, I liked your point about the like start with the familiar. So if you wanna say that point again of like you
Mhm.
start with the familiar and then you build the weird on top of it because then your reader's more likely to go with you. If you wanna,
Right.
I thought that was brilliant.
When I'm writing, I bring elements of my life into the story,
Mhm,
and so I want to meet the reader at the point where they're bringing in elements of their life. So I try to make sure that the scenes are that the world is recognizable
Mm-hmm.
and yet has these additional layers to it. Um, perhaps how something feels in their hand, or how they move between cities or between planets, are familiar things that they can say, oh yeah, I get that the upper rail on the transit. I can
I've
understand
been on the L. Yeah.
cloth is.
Yeah.
I love that song that is now
Mm-hmm.
a historical piece. They see things that they're familiar with, and then they're ripe for the picking when you start putting in futuristic things.
Yeah. Or magical. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Lauren, what about you when you're balancing that the science with the magic and the
Yeah, absolutely. So I really liked Valerie's suggestion about making like the details feel really real in that lived environment to kind of add that verisimilitude to the story. And I really liked ML's suggestion about giving the reader some like touchstones to kind of bring them in and really feel like they're anchored in the story world. Those are really important. The thing that I see the most in stories that don't work for me is when they have like a big thing in their story, in their world, that they don't necessarily think through all the way down in terms of layers, in terms of downstream effects. And like, okay, so if you have this society where X doesn't happen, then Y and Z and all these things are implicated, and they don't always necessarily follow that through line through. And so when there's deviations there and they're not backed up by how the culture operates, or how the environment interacts with a battlefield or something like that, that frustrates me. And so that's where I tend to spend a lot of my pre-writing activities there is, okay, so if these are my factors in my story, then let's make sure that even if it's a fantastical context, at least I've done the thinking through that it feels rational in a certain way. And if it's not rational, then I have it backed up in terms of either my lore or my character's belief system or something that then justifies it in a way. And so that's how I approach it pretty consistently across my work.
Yeah, there's a quote, and I never remember who said it, and I think he was quoting someone else anyway. But the idea is that science fiction writers, it's not our job to predict flying cars; it's our job to predict the traffic jam. And so I feel like that is what Lauren is talking about essentially. Is like, what are if this, then what else? What are the different effects of this? Did this thing evolve? We get to hear, and what else could that mean? What are the arms races that could be happening with stuff when one thing is created? What else will naturally then be made of it? When they created advertising, they also have propaganda, or vice versa. Like, the different ways that things can potentially be used and misused depends on also too, like income level disparities, and what kinds of prejudices exist in this world, and it's being misused to buttress the status quo or to harm people potentially. So they're all things that come out of like what Lauren was talking about.
Yeah, there is like I don't know if this is Tumblr wisdom or an author on Twitter. Like I have no idea, but you see it float around sometimes where it's like, okay, you have to know 2 levels down of the after effects. So if you're like, okay, there are giant alligators in the sewers. Why are there giant alligators in the sewers? Oh, well, it's because the vampires use the sewers to travel through the city, and so the city brought in the alligators to try to control the vampire population. How did that work? Oh, it's the nuns of the order of whatever, and they like train the alligators. You're like, oh, okay, I don't have to ask any more questions because these follow on effects.
Who's eating the alligators at the end of that process?
Right. So maybe it's 3 levels down, but it's like it's this thing of like, okay, yes, this, then this. And I think what's hard sometimes in books, especially when you're blending genres, is we go down rabbit holes, right? We think through all of these things. The reader doesn't need to know all of them. Like the reader doesn't need to know the 17 after effects. They need to know, okay, they've thought about this and this all checks out. Either because it's familiar, like, okay, they know who Cole Porter is, so they still have this connection to Earth, but maybe they don't have these other connections to Earth. But okay, now I'm interested, as opposed to, oh, she just didn't think this through. or she just gave me a very detailed timeline, and I don't need it. So it is that balance.
Turn the
A-
page.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
like,
lot. I've described it as the stuff that we write. It doesn't have to be airtight, but it probably should hold water. Like cupped hands can hold water, but you know, it you have to have at least that much in order to
yeah,
keep people from, like Emma was saying, like disbelieving something. Just you have to have the trust. You have to build the
yeah,
trust.
yeah.
Right, right.
Oh,
And so, and I'm curious as to how how you make those little steps, the background, the backstory, and the part that the reader doesn't get, but that you have to mesh out for them to be able to see other aspects of the world. Um, do you do you ever do what I read about interviewing your character? I read somewhere that you should interview your characters, and I'm curious if people actually do that. You know, I tried it, and it was like a lot of information, but it was very useful. You know, later in the story, like to know what color are these people's eyes. You know, what how does the atmosphere affect the glow from their skin? Is that
Ooh,
normal? You know,
yeah.
but do you do those things? Do you find that it's necessary, or is there other ways that you can build your backstories?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't do a formal interview. I have done it at various earlier stages in my writing, but I don't do it now in terms of like what I'm working on now as a general rule. I usually have a better sense of what I need to know, and then I can figure out the rest as needed. And so I it's taken years and years and years of writing to kind of get to this point where I can feel like, okay, that I'm going to need to like drill down on, and I'll come back to it. Or I don't care what she's wearing in this scene. It doesn't matter. Like, you know, and so, or I'll get to a point, you know, in like the third act and be like, oh, okay, if I put something here and I put something here, and then I have a through line, you know, and can tie it all together. So sometimes I'll leave things open so that if I need something in the third act to bring something together, I can then put it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't usually do that kind of thing either because I find that for me, a lot of that will emerge as you go. The details that I tend to focus on are what I can't remember which author, but called it like the inner guts of it sort of thing. What are the characters' fears? What are their secrets? What kind of scars and splinters do they have? Things that were formative events in their history. And I think that a lot of that ends up tying back into the story, right? It's stuff that then you can mine for plot. So not to talk about myself too much, but again, in this book, she has this big secret that she's keeping, which is that she's part of this order of knights that is being hunted throughout the galaxy, very Jedi style. And so that secret then is something she's trying to keep throughout the book. It is informing her actions, and it's also informing what the other characters do and how they react when they find out her secret. What do they have to do about it? How are they going to change their behavior? And then in terms of the world, it's kind of like, okay, this is all affected by this horrible empire that is doing this stuff. There's yet another one of these sort of scars that they're causing problems. And so the world is creating the character is taking actions that create the plot, and all of it is sort of these inner guts of the character more so than did I interview them to figure out their voice, which I think is a great exercise. I'm not knocking it. But also like how do the characters talk to each other, I think is a good one. So instead of a monologue sort of, it's a dialogue. And you can do exercises like that too, where you put your different characters together and see what happens, see what emerges.
Yeah. I got my start in fan fiction. So I did a lot of character sheets back in the day. And you that is kind of an interview. Like it's not a direct conversation with your character, but it is very much like, okay, what are these specific things? And it helps you to stay consistent. And I don't really do that anymore. But with Plague of Magic, at first I had the character and I knew all of that, and I knew the world really clearly. But then I realized she actually needed to have a gang. There's a gang of thieves. And then I had to figure out then not only who they were, but how they all interacted. And so I was like, oh, do I interview them? And so I kind of tried it. It didn't really work. But what did work was writing a lot of little vignettes of like their earlier times together, things that will never ever go in the book, but really showed me, oh, this is who they are in relation to each other. And then it's also, by the time I get to the end of the book, I realize, nope, the beginning's not correct, and then I always have to go punch it back up again because the characters have done other things. But I do love the vignette thing that was suggested to me by Shami Stovall, who's an incredible indie author. And she's like, yeah, I just write little scenes that I'll never use. They don't have to be good. I just have to know what would my character do in this situation. And that's really fun.
Yeah, I will also say that one thing that I think is cool if you're going to do something character sheety, and you all can talk about maybe like how do you potentially do cool stuff like this, or what examples of this do you like? A thing that I like, I stole from Blades in the Dark, which is a TTRPG, and among other places, anime, manga, like, but having sort of vibes and aesthetics for different factions, that they have a sort of uniformity that you create there. And then that way, it's like Star Wars. When you see the white armored soldiers show up, uh-oh, the Empire's here, because they have a very kind of clear, consistent vibe. And I find that especially anime, like their characters have such strict, this person has this powers, they look like that, they have this color hair, it's spiky or it's long or it's got a weird shape or whatever. They wear these kinds of clothes. It's all very kind of orchestrated in a way that I think is useful. I want to say V. Schwab does a really good job with that as well, just having very strong character aesthetics. Ilona Andrews, super very like specific, this is what these characters look like. And I think that's something that is very useful also in creating a space fantasy, because you are creating these fantastical worlds that you're trying to be lived in and accessible. And so fashion is a great way to handle that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that, because this is reminding me of something that ML said earlier in terms of how she deals with her technology. But when the aesthetics is really important, I think, also when you're doing technology as well, because it can be very invisible, or parts black boxy. And so I really like to have a visual component whenever possible that combines with whatever it is, whether it's a touch screen or a hyperdrive or whatever, so that you have something visual to also cue to the reader as well. And so it's that sense of aesthetics that even if it's not necessary for the function of it, I still try to have something visual to kind of tie into to make it even punchier on the page.
Oh no, ML, you just muted. Come back.
Something that Valerie, you mentioned about observing anime and things like that. I found that I love martial arts movies, and so I found myself watching the series about Ip Man, and
That's
and
fantastic.
there's another one, the name of which I can't remember, but I watched their body movement because I was actually interested in making sure that when I described a scene, that it was really possible for a body form to move that way. And I wanted to get that right, so it's amazing where we pull so much from our own world. Even though we're creating another world, we're still bringing familiar elements of our world into it, either as Lauren said, to make sure that we're following the steps, that yes, if you move this way, then you're going to have this effect and the hit's going to land this way. You do have to do those chess moves in your mind to make sure that the story is correct, is believable. So I thought that was really cool that you watch anime. And I try to watch anime, but I figure reading comic books is close enough.
Oh yeah,
a lot of overlap.
Clear aesthetics, clear vibes being established. One of the space fantasies that is a touch point that I was going to mention later is Brian K. Vaughan's Saga, which is a really great comic series that has a lot of very fantastical elements in it, and yet is still very clearly like science fiction as well. So,
So this is a two-part question, in part recommended by our amazing behind-the-scenes producer, who wants to be hidden, but I'm still going to call out how awesome she is. So are you usually a character or plot-driven writer? And part B is that different when you're blending genres?
I think I'm a character driven writer, because I really want to get to know my characters and know what drives them and how they're going to react in situations, because usually they're very seldom on their own. One of the short stories that I wrote is called Josiah, and that character is he really is affecting the world on his own, but he has interaction with the family. So he's a loner, he's a stranger, and he's there for a specific purpose.
Mhm.
So everything that happens in that world, even though it's our world, assumingly it's our world, it's very familiar, but he is an other. He's a mystery,
Mm.
and he's a stranger who is instantly comforting to everyone, and he's there just temporarily, and everybody knows he's there temporarily. So my whole story just
Just him.
evolves
Yeah.
around what he does, how he got there, how he responds to the family, and what his purpose is. And when he fulfills his purpose, what next? You know,
Yeah. And is
what
that different in the short story we are talking about with the
mm.
nebula and the like it what
It's
because you had the
very
world first.
yes, with the different way of being, it
Mhm.
started with the world,
Yeah.
but the world is almost a character in itself,
That is cool.
because the world affects how things happen between these characters. And
Mhm.
if their world wasn't the way it was, it would totally be no story. It would change the whole story.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mallory
Yeah, I
or
would
Lauren?
say mine is both. I pay attention to both pretty carefully. I really want to make, compelling plots, but I also want to have depth to my characters. And so
Mhm.
sometimes the plot will occur to me first, sometimes the character will come first. And sometimes I'm discovering my characters along the way. And I'll do like a self insert until I figure out who they are and why they're making the decisions they
Mhm.
need
Mm.
to make the story go. And I like both. They both scratch my brain in different kinds of ways.
Yeah.
And and now, sometimes they get all mashed up together sometimes, and it's a lot of fun figuring it out. Like that's the process for me that I find most enjoyable in some ways, is to just how to make the story go and who are the people, driving it. And yeah, I mean, I could just do that all day, clearly.
And with the shining city in the desert, that was
Mhm.
kind of like what ML said. It was kind of like the world came first.
Yeah, yeah, and I
So
had to figure
interesting.
out why that was why what just what the big why for everything in that story, and
That's
that
so
was
cool.
just a delight.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do think all the things really ideally are informing each other, right? And so
Mhm.
you think to yourself, if you're going to start with the city in the desert, it is then who lives in a city like that? Why are they
Mhm.
there? What do they do there? What is their deal, basically? Um, and then what kinds of problems would those people have that they would have to figure out how to solve, which is usually one of the sort of main roots of plot is somebody has a problem that needs to be solved. There's some kind of goal that needs to be achieved. You can have very slice of life stuff that usually is less about problems and more about just kind of daily existence, but even that is very world focused, right? Even if you are a particular person, even if you're, oh gosh, what is that? There's a manga, slice of manga about being a gondolier on Mars.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, unfortunately, but essentially it's just, okay, how do you be a gondolier on Mars? This is the
Yeah.
question. And then what kinds of things does this character have happen to her on a daily basis as a gondolier on Mars? Um,
Mhm.
and so that is sort of the crux of the space fantasy then is what kinds of characters come out of what kinds of worlds, and then what kinds of lives are they living, what kinds of problems are they solving, and it's all very, it's all tangled together. I think you can't separate the rubber bands from the rubber band ball.
Yeah. I love one of my favorite things to ask authors are like yes, no, A, B questions, because the answer is almost always like yes and or all C, all of the above. C, science fantasy, right? Like, and to be fair, speculative fiction didn't start all genre fragmented, right? It was pretty much a very blended science and fantasy all together, and then over time, for various reasons, namely advertising, we broke into genres and genres and genres. And I find it interesting that maybe we're bringing it all back again. So speaking of, are there any science fantasy books? We've mentioned some of the big ones, like Star Wars. Are there any science fantasy books that you're like, yes, this is what I'm talking about? This, like Lauren said, this scratches my brain in the right way.
Yeah. As Lauren said, and I love that phrase, it scratches my brain in certain
So
ways.
good.
I am a big Octavia Butler fan, and
Oh,
I've read so much of her work. And I compare her and Audre Lorde because even though they're writing different things, Audre Lorde is writing more, I guess, I don't consider it romance, but life stuff
Mhm,
and nonfiction.
mhm,
Whereas Octavia Butler is writing other worlds. I still get that scratch because, like, when Lauren described the city in the desert, I want to know what's happening outside that city. You know, what are the people doing when they
mhm.
have to when they find themselves on the other side, and how that breaks into the story, or does it clash, But I don't even know if I answered your question, but
Well,
you
Octavia Butler, so like Parable of the Sower, I would
yes,
say
I
is a little
love
bit,
Parable of the
yeah.
Sower, and watching that, and then watching, Kindred, when they actually did a production of her story, Kindred, and
Mhm.
watching this person and how they had to deal with being in 2 different time frames,
Mm, yeah.
amazing,
Yeah, there's
the
some
the
magic going on there. Yeah.
yes, that requires some magic,
Mhm,
um the fabric of these stories and how they're being blended,
mhm.
it just fascinates me because when I'm writing, I don't know the story.
Yeah,
I'm listening to the story.
find
I'm
it.
hearing this, I'm receiving the story, and I'm the scribe writing it down.
Mhm.
And I'm like, even in that thinking, okay, what if there is a scribe writing these things down? What would their life be like, But
Yeah,
I
there's
just
the science fantasy for us.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this just sci-fi in general. I love
Mhm.
Stargate, even I thought it was like a little candy show, in my opinion. It's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is eye candy," but there were
Yeah.
so many cute stories that had elements that you could draw from, Deep Space Nine,
Mhm.
the,
The prophets are
you know
magic. Yeah.
yes, the the idea of being able to live in space and
Mhm.
do some of the things that we recognize, we're like, oh, that's just they're just playing another form of acquisition,
Mhm.
things like that. Yeah, being
Yeah.
able to pull those things in and see those that blending
Yeah.
even of genre. You might
Yeah.
have a little bit of romance. You can't help it. That's what life is.
That's how we all got here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but that's not the whole premise of the story,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
those are some of the big ones that really catch me.
I love it. Yeah. What are
Yeah.
some other books? So, because if people are watching this or listening to this and they're like, I love space fantasy, I will read all of these books. Where else should they go? What else should they check out?
So yeah, I mean, the first one for me was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Lewingle. And so that was like my gateway drug, I guess. The Dark Sword trilogy by Tracy Hicks and
Oh,
Margaret
yeah.
Weiss. That one was the first time it felt like a fantasy, and then you get to like a reveal, and it's like, oh no, this is the real world. And so like that just blew my mind reading that in, I guess, like middle school or something like that. And then Penelope, the list that's provided in the chat is fantastic. The only ones I can think of that are different than those.
Oh, that was Valerie. I only had like 4 or 5 for myself, and Valerie's like, I'm here to prepare us.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
Valerie should use their time to talk about all of them. The ones I can add to that are out of science fiction romance. And I feel like this might be an inflammatory statement, but I feel like anything with space travel is a little bit fantastic to begin with, because we can't do it, right? So there's a lot of creative license in those stories, right? And so, but ones that are super fun, Anne Aguirre's Grim Space series, and then Rachel Bach's Fortune's Pawn series. Those are both science fiction romance with kick-ass heroines where the space travel is magic, and there's power suits and all sorts of fun stuff. And so those are a delight.
Awesome. And Valerie, you do not have to list all of them. I bet we can put some of them in the show notes. But
I just
do
didn't
tell
want
us.
to her
No, it's amazing.
no.
Tell us your favorites. Like you did such a great job. That was amazing.
Yeah, and I haven't even read all those books. I just was looking for ideas and thinking like, okay, what are some? And so since the Locked Tomb trilogy hasn't come up yet, that's definitely space fantasy.
It's on my list.
Yeah, so Gideon the Ninth, if you haven't read it yet, you should probably get on that.
So good.
And then I mentioned already the Saga comics, definitely Brian K. Vaughan. But there are so many different options. If you go back in time, you've got stuff like Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune. You've got older, even farther back, you can go to A Princess Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. But then you get, like the space racism stuff. So maybe not that. But sort of sword and planetary romance, those are genres that pre-existed before we got to the space fantasy. But to, I guess, run through some more titles, you can have Nightbox Gambit, Yoon Ha Lee. That's a really great one. Escaping Exodus by Nikki Drayden. Aetherbound, E.K. Johnston. Midnight Robber, Naval Hopkinson. Straight up magic, space. Put them together. Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. And the thing about some of these is that it's kind of like, is this space opera? Is this space fantasy? And so, for example, Hunt the Stars by Jessie Mihalik is also a space fantasy, romance, space opera. But the fantasy there is more like psychic powers kind of stuff. And so do we call that fantasy, or do we call that science? And people can argue about, our superheroes fantasy or our superheroes science fiction, and, the questions there. Starships Mage by Glenn Stewart, the Mage Worlds series by Deborah Doyle and James McDonald, definitely you can check those out. Binti, Nydia Okorafor, and Seeds of so good. Seeds of Inheritance by Amy Kaczynski is literally elves in space. Like, cannot get more space fantasy than that. But the ones that I love the most, which I'm going to go to bat for, which are both Earth fantasy and space fantasy, the Innkeeper series by Ilona Andrews. Those are super fun. Basically, Earth is at the nexus of a bunch of warps, so that people have decided, all of the aliens out there have just kind of decided Earth is neutral territory, and also you're not allowed to talk about aliens on Earth except as fiction. And so aliens are constantly coming in and out of Earth space. Nobody's allowed to talk about it, but you have these inns on Earth that are magical in nature, and all the aliens will come stay at these inns. And so the main character of that series is an innkeeper who magically takes care of this inn, but then sometimes travels to different planets. There are vampires, they're aliens. There are werewolves, they're aliens. And it's just deeply fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the only ones I would add to that, I will double down on the Locked Tomb books. Gideon the Ninth, like 90% of that book, I was like, what is happening? But I was so into it, because I don't think I saw the necromancy description, but I don't think I was prepared. I don't know that you can be prepared. It's so good. And that's one of the things I love about space fantasy, is when it just gets deeply weird. Like, it is, the magic makes the science even crazier. And like, ask any quantum physicist, science is already really weird. So, so cool. And I wouldn't have classified this. I'll come right back to you, ML. But I just want to shout out this trilogy, the Broken Earth books. So I hadn't thought of them as kind of a a sci-fi fantasy, but I caught it on the list when I was prepping for the panel, and I was like, no, that checks out. Like it really does, and oof, cannot recommend that enough. I know it won like a bunch of Hugos. Like it's not like I'm telling you about some hidden wonder, but if you have not read Fifth Season and the Broken Earth books, please treat yourself. It's beautiful and incredible and deeply weird in the best way.
Mhm.
ML, you were gonna say,
Yeah, you guys are destroying my to be read
right?
that. I don't think
Right.
I have any furniture that can hold this. But I just wanted to, to shout out to some of the kind of YA stuff,
Oh
like
yeah,
Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes was like
right, right.
probably my first like there's something else that could be happening,
Mm-hmm.
and the Bridge to Terabithia, even though it wasn't necessarily magical, the
Mm-hmm.
imagination that it required was a good spark for me,
Yeah.
and just books like that, books that we've read as younger kids,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't see them as being in the sci-fi genre. They still have those elements in them, and I recommend them to people, just Jewel Gomez wrote one, I think she wrote only one novel that I can recall, and it was about a female vampire who became a vampire during when people were enslaved, and
Mm-hmm.
it's her journey through time. Her journey living day to day through all these ages and how she responds to that. And I'm like, that is the best. That book, and I'm trying desperately to remember the Gilda stories. Oh my gosh,
Ooh, that's a
that
great
book,
title.
the Gilda story. I bought 5 copies of it. They were autographed, and I gave them to people I thought needed. You need to read this.
Mm-hmm.
It was that profound to me. I was like, here, this book and you belong together.
That
Stranger,
is brilliant.
so
Brilliant. We are somehow at time though. I think I was trying to like track it a little bit. I don't know. I'm not great at time math. But any book, say that one again. The Guild of Stories. That's when
the
you bought five.
Gilda
Mm,
stories, yes, by
yeah,
Jewel Gomez.
amazing. Because anytime you find yourself doing that, that's a book everyone should probably know about. So speaking of, people have stuck with us for this roughly 45-ish minutes. I don't again know how time works. So I am sure they are intrigued by the books and the stories and the inspirations that you all have talked about. So where can people find you besides this lovely conversation, so that they can consensually and respectfully stalk you on the internet and or convention streets?
Well, I am at on Facebook at ML Dumars. I can be found at mldumarsartist.com and culturalist /ML Dumars. That site I recommend for any artist, no matter what your field is. Get yourself a culturalist page. It is international. People will find you.
That's
So
awesome.
those are the places to find me.
Thanks.
Yeah, my website is always up to date and has the most complete amount of information on me, and that's laurenctafo.com. I am also on Instagram and Blue Sky, less so other places, so that would be the best place to connect with me. And I will be at Worldcon this year, so hopefully to see some of your faces there as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I am at valerievaldez.com. That is Valdez with an S if you are listening. Sometimes that gives as it's not like a real website for some reason and gives security issues. So the actual website that redirects to is candleinsunshine.com. But I promised I'm not trying to spam you or infect your computer with anything. I will also be at Right Hive, which is an online convention. Can definitely recommend. Flights at Foundry, which Dream Foundry puts on every year. I usually can be found there, if only hanging out. I'm going to be teaching at Viable Paradise this year, so if you get in, hey, I will see you in October. And I stream almost every night on Twitch at The Kids Are Asleep, which is ostensibly when we are streaming, but often they are still awake now because they are getting older, and that's what happens.
That all checks out. That makes total sense. You can find me at marisawolf.com or Instagram. I was doing such a good job staying updated there, and then life did life things. But that's where you can find me. I like taking pictures of my dogs. In fact, my handle is at bookdogs because I will post about dog and book. So you're welcome. You can also see me in person this year at, where am I going? DragonCon in Atlanta, Labor Day weekend, 85,000 of your closest nerd friends. So come hang out with us. And you can find us about once a month right here on this channel, wherever you are listening to your podcast goodness. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all to the panelists. This is really great. And you've, again, like Emil said, destroyed my TBR. But what a way to do it. So thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.
And thank you, Marissa, for all this. This is great.
Yes. You're so welcome. Penelope does all the heavy lifting. I just roll up. Like, it's pretty exciting. Penelope, come back to us. We're all done.
There's nothing more exciting than talking to a bunch of other writers. Love it.
Well, it's wonderful you talked about to other writers about writing and inspiration. And I think that's a lot of people think that inspiration comes from somewhere, this, the muse, hits you. And sometimes just, I was looking at this piece of bread that my cat just knocked off of the stove, and I started thinking, that bread, kind of bounced, like let's say I do horror, like we push somebody off a cliff in a mattress. I wonder if it would bounce the same way. And then you start, the brain starts, turning and turning. It just comes from anywhere, and I think it's great.
And then you Google it and you get on a list.
Yes, right. Yes. And so a good friend of mine bought me a shirt that says, like, don't mind my my list, like
search history.
My search history. I'm a writer. So
and you start getting weird ads.
Yeah. I get a lot of like tractor ads now. I don't know what I was researching, but
tractor ads. Okay.
Always so interesting.
Awesome. Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, and it's the only one of two books of his I would recommend. The other one is The Stand, but he wrote this book called On Writing, and he talked about how he got inspiration for some of his movies, and they were just as random as could be. I was like, really? You were a janitor and that inspired you?
There's a book about space janitors. You could read it, Jim C. Hines.
I would want to be in some other world too, I guess, if I were a janitor at a high school.
It happens.
It's true. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad that you put everyone here. Remember, I hope that you're writing down all your different works that you have talked about and remember them, so that you can send us covers and images that relate to those works, so we can get them, into the edited form. Before we produce anything, I will send everyone a copy of the first edit that we go through, and you can say, hey, that's, I don't want to have said that, can you, take out something or put something in, so I can put even things in, if you can remember, like, to wear the same clothing. Something you get.
So like suddenly my hair is bright blue. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm serious, and I can put something in that you want to put in that you left out, and that's about it. And then afterwards, I'm a little behind, but afterwards, what I do is, like, after we've done this, you're here and you talked here and you sent me your submission stuff, and I'm going to do like a short little thing of each individual writer.
You're so great.
So you will have like your individual thing where we take little bits out of stuff that you say, like the questions that we ask you up front, and then we'll, if you gave us the answers that were on video, then they'll be cut in. So it'll just have like a picture of the question, and then it'll have you answering. And this picture of the question, and then you answer. And if there's something that I would want to have you answer that I don't think we got an answer to, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't been able to get to those questions yet because I am on book deadline right now, and also work deadline, and also
I'm behind too, so don't worry. Like I said, I'm behind. So
I opened the document and I went, oh no.
Close the document.
Yeah.
It wasn't you, it was me.
I'm behind, so that's okay. So I'm going to the first one, but when you have time, get to it and we'll put it together. So then you have your little get a little video of yourself that you can use, to post it somewhere, about what you're doing and what you did,
Right.
and your thoughts and your inspirations. And so that'll be fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was very much one of those
Thank
ADHD
you.
things, where it's like, oh, this is too many right now.
Yes,
I will
True.
simply go
I
lie
get it.
down.
I get it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
get it. Right?
I do have to go though. I
Okay,
chugged
y'all,
so
but
much
yeah,
water. I'm so sorry,
I
but
think
this
you
was
guys,
so
so
much.
much fun.
I think we
Yeah.
did good. We did very well. So thank you all
Thank
so
you
much.
again.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
remainder of your weekend. Happy Mother's Day for all of you all
Oh,
who are
yes. Thank you.
moms and have moms,
Thank
and,
you.
all right, so take care of yourselves, and you'll get this stuff probably like within the next week and a half.
All
You're the
right.
best.
Cool.
All right,
Thank
y'all
Thank you
take
all
care.
so
you.
much.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.